everyone, long time no see. It's been a little while since I was on camera in one of these videos. I got a new poster. It's a Doctor Who poster. Check it out. Look at it. Check out the poster. I think it's really cool. Anyway, why am I here? I'm here to talk about Scoob. And why Scoob of all movies? Well, it's sort of the closest thing to a hot topic that's kinda sorta in my wheelhouse, and that, I have the time to watch and consume and form thoughts on, while my other scripted and edited videos are still, waiting in the quote-unquote edit bay. Those videos, namely the next Spider-Man-a-thon and then another video after that, which I've actually just finished recording, will be coming in like a couple of weeks. And I didn't want you guys to be starved for my precious media-related thoughts in the wait time for that. So, while we're waiting for those videos to get done to come in the coming weeks, I'm just going to talk about the Goofy Tonkin' Dog movie, if that's okay. Oh, speaking of which, my dog decides to take that moment to come in. Hey, Phoenix. Hello. This is Phoenix. Has he been on camera before? Have you been on camera before? I'm not sure. Not the face. Anyway, so Scoob. Scoob is a thing that a lot of people who I follow have already sort of given their thoughts on. Hopefully, it won't be like too late by the time I've got this edited. That's mainly a large reason why I'm doing this unscripted. Hopefully that cuts down on edit time at least a little bit, so that I actually have something to, give you guys this week. That said, reaction to Scoob has been pretty lukewarm on pretty much all accounts. I don't really think I've seen a review from anyone about this movie that's really raving about it. And, I was on the fence if I should even give my 2 cents. But, again, I felt like I needed to have something. And also I did a Twitter poll. I probably should have also done a YouTube community poll, but I don't know how many people respond to those things. I did a Twitter poll asking if I should talk about Scoob, and, the resounding majority opinion was, yeah, go ahead. So this is that, and sadly, I hate to say it, but I think I'm just going to be one more voice in the chorus of this is a pretty lukewarm, mediocre, at best, okay movie. And here's the thing, Scooby-Doo is not really a media franchise that I think of myself as all that attached to, and yet, when I really dwell on it, I am I do have that attachment. I do have a lot of nostalgia for multiple, I dare even say like the majority of Scooby-Doo related output on TV at least. Like, I know there's some video games and some comics, but Scooby-Doo is a TV franchise, and I don't know, I've really enjoyed most of the Scooby-Doo related stuff I've watched. Like, I don't think I'm in the minority when I say I really love Mystery Incorporated. I've got a lot of fond memories of the sort of 90s to 2000s stretch of the direct-to-DVD movies, what's new Scooby-Doo, and of course the classic 60s, 70s stuff. And you watch Scooby-Doo and it's very clear and obvious that it's a goofy, slapstick-driven franchise for children, for the most part. There are certain movies and certain stripes of Scooby-Doo that are well-written and clever and genuinely atmospheric and spooky, and I feel like if Scoob is missing anything, it's missing that. And that actually ties into why I feel kind of at home talking about it in the first place, which is Scooby-Doo, or I should say Scoob, this movie is a superhero movie. It's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, a superhero movie. It's a crossover with the Blue Falcon property. Blue Falcon and Dynamite versus Dick Dastardly is the A-plot of the film. We've got a lot of superhero action sequences that are sort of, I guess you could say, touched up with the Scooby-Doo style and sense of humor. But the big thing this movie lacks is any sort of sense of the creep factor or the macabre. Which, I'm not necessarily saying that all Scooby-Doo properties need that. It's just, I think it's a big part of the brand identity, and it doesn't really feel like a Scooby-Doo movie if you don't have that. Well, the big idea here is that we're setting up kind of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, hence Blue Falcon, hence Dynamite, hence Dick Dastardly, and a lot of other cameos that, I won't spoil. I'm gonna make this a largely spoiler-free video, because honestly there is not that much to spoil in the first place, but, I did get a little tickle out of some of the universe-building stuff, but really it's just unfortunate that this is clearly and obviously a case of Scooby-Doo is the biggest, most widely well-known Hanna-Barbera property, and it's sort of been saddled with, carrying this universe-building exercise in the veins of, like, The Mummy, or The Amazing Spider-Man 2, in the guise of a Scooby-Doo movie, where personally, I prefer my Scooby-Doo stuff to be a little bit more, I like to balance the goofy, childish, slapstick element of it with the sort of genuinely creepy atmosphere, and maybe a little bit more involved plot. Or at least, if not an involved plot, a genuine sense of mystery, a sense of figuring things out. And it really sucks that on no level, I don't think, is this movie really a mystery movie. We know who the bad guy is very early on, the stakes are very clear, and they never really change. And something I will give this movie that, again, seems to be one of the more common, sort of praises of it, or at least compliments lended to it, is that the villain motivation is cute and interesting. I feel like there's actually a chance for a little bit of thematic depth, or at least something to be going on there, in terms of contrasting Scooby and Shaggy with the villain. That never really gets to happen. But yeah, no, this is a very straightforward, very superhero-esque movie and story, and it feels less like a Scooby-Doo movie than I would have liked it to. I will say the element of the movie that I do think works, that it does carry over from the property, is the slapstick stuff. I think the visual gags and, the sort of iconic Scooby-Doo thing of, the stretches of action of Scooby and Shaggy just being chased and, gaslighting the villains and putting on their little shticks and stuff. That stuff, when it pops up, is fun and true to form. And I think a large part of that is what I thought was a neat stylistic choice, was keeping all of the old Hanna-Barbera sound effects. And not just as, a cute one-off little gag, but, throughout the movie, the, goofy, distinctly Scooby-Doo sound effects and stuff is present, and I think all of that stuff really works. What doesn't work as much is the characters, and I mean that in terms of the characterization and also the voice acting. And again, everyone's made their bones about this. I don't think Will Forte is a horrible Shaggy, but not getting Grey Delisle Griffin and Matthew Lillard and Frank Welker back. They've got Frank Welker as Scooby. Not letting him continue to do Fred feels odd. Granted, I don't know if that voice fits with this very, very arch, very not Fred version of Fred that we have in this movie. All of the characterization is kind of off, especially with the Mystery Gang, and Fred suffers it the most. Where, again, I know that Fred's always been kind of the character who's been the most broadly drawn anyway, so different adaptations tend to give him different character traits and we don't question it, but I really don't like the sort of frat bro thing that we've got going on with him here. It's a similar thing to what we did in the previous two, in the live action movies, with Freddie Prinze Jr., who was kind of doing a Freddie Prinze Jr. for Fred, where he was very frat bro-y there too. But I don't know, that one had kind of a charm to it, and I don't know, the characterization across not even just the Mystery Gang, but everyone in this movie is kind of charmless. Again, when it is working, it's working with Shaggy and Scooby, but even then, it's in bits and spurts. And, Fred and Velma and Daphne are kind of nothing characters across this movie. Dick Dastardly is way more generic villain than you would hope Dick Dastardly to be. And I know how that sounds, because Dick Dastardly, even in the Wacky Races, he is the trope starter of, a mustache twirly villain. But But I don't know, there's a sense of fun and a sense of like manic energy and like evil glee to like the traditional Dick Dastardly that's not here. Blue Falcon and Dynamite, their like whole bickering back and forth thing feels a little bit forced. I don't really care for or sympathize with either of them. And like, I don't want it to sound like I hated this movie or that I've got nothing but bad things to say about it. I think it looks nice in spots. Again, I think the slapstick works. Unfortunately, all of the, I guess, quote-unquote millennial humor, all of the pop culture-y, like meme-y, current, like present-day humor, it feels very, very cringeworthy. Like, it's all real. How do you do, fellow kids? You know, it's really unfortunate that none of those jokes land. Okay, you know what? I'm lying. One does land, and it's the one that was the most cringeworthy throughout the movie. Again, like, no spoilers, but for anyone who's seen the movie, the Simon Cowell thing. Like, we open this movie with Simon Cowell, for some reason, being a character who's, like, basically initiates the plot. We initiate the plot with Simon Cowell, pretty much. Of, like, you know, we do the sort of Monsters Unleashed thing of, like, well, what do Shaggy and Scooby really contribute to the gang? And, like, they go out to prove themselves and all that. All that starts because of Simon Cowell, and it's so odd and strange. Like, just bizarre decision. Like, I get it, Scooby-Doo, like, has a history of bringing in real-life celebrities to play themselves, but why Simon Cowell, of all people? Whatever. All of the sort of running gag that is, like, who cares what Simon Cowell thinks? It's really odd, but then we pay it off at the end with something that made me bust my gut. Like, the final payoff of the Simon Cowell stuff made me laugh hard. I don't know. I feel like this movie's just really weak, and I made a comparison to The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at the top of this video. If I feel like that's a really apt comparison. If you know how you feel about something like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 or like an Iron Man 2, as far as just the story and the things that work, feeling really compromised by the need to be a cinematic universe starter, then I think you're gonna know how you feel about this movie. I'm pretty lukewarm on those movies, I'm pretty lukewarm on this movie. I don't feel like there was no one working on this who cared. I do feel like on at least some level, like the animators or whoever was in charge of the more physical gags, like there were people working on this movie who understood the appeal of Scooby-Doo and tried to incorporate that into this film, but it's so buried under sort of like the different genre stuff and the unfortunate things like the voice actor choices and the poor characterization and just like the really forced elements of the plot. So I don't know, if that sounds like the kind of thing that you're willing to put up with just so that you can, you know, if you're curious about a nicely animated, decently paced, sometimes kind of funny Scooby-Doo adventure, then, I don't know, give Scoob a shot. I really don't see any reason to go and seek it out, though, personally. That said, now that that's over, I'm gonna do a solid to my buddy Rob, Rob, who you can hear on the Doctor Who podcasts, and when I did the Twitter poll, he asked me if I could talk about the Red Shirt Shaggy trilogy, and so, you know, I decided why the heck not. I'm gonna commit to that. So I watched Scoob and also the 3 Red Shirt Shaggy movies from the 80s. And so this video is also about those. And for those of you who don't know what those movies are, they're Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf, Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, and Scooby-Doo and the Boo Brothers. And again, these are things where like I look back on this as like, yeah, you know, maybe I like Scooby-Doo and like I have more of a nostalgic attachment than I think, because I have a lot of nostalgia for these movies. Boo Brothers and Ghoul School more so than Reluctant Werewolf. Reluctant Werewolf I don't actually remember watching a lot. I watched enough of it that I remember most of the characters, and I remember that it's like a wacky racist type thing. that aside, like, I don't have as a fondness for it that I do for the other two, and that carried into these viewings. I think of the three, Reluctant Werewolf is easily the weakest. Like, I don't know, part of this is genre stuff, where, again, all three of these movies manage to do what Scoob doesn't, and, you know, have not necessarily a horror angle, but, like, the trappings of that, like, the spooky, sort of macabre imagery, and, like, monsters and everything. Each of the three, though, given that, is kind of a different genre of movie, and it's really interesting to look at the ways that each of them, like, they're not very samey feeling structurally, which I was surprised by. Going into these movies, I was expecting them to feel like kind of the same thing done 3 times, and it's really not that. Reluctant Werewolf, again, like I said, is a wacky racist thing, and it's kind of my least favorite of the 3, in part because it shares a problem with Scoob, which is characterization. Shaggy feels really out of character in this movie, and it's really bizarre. We've got this random girlfriend for him. Why is she here? It's really strange. She's like the Trixie to Shaggy's Speed Racer, and I don't understand what I'm really interested in, like, what was the inception for this character? We've got, you know, a bunch of Universal horror monsters. Dracula's like the big guy in charge. And he's got the Hunch Bunch, who are... I found the Hunch Bunch entertaining. But, like, you know, it's a bunch of goofs and wackos doing a bunch of puns. A lot of which I do think land. You know, I'm a pun guy. A lot of people cannot abide by puns. I'm fine with that. And yeah, all 3 of these are very pun-heavy movies, but Reluctant Werewolf most of all. Watch it for the puns, I guess. Ghoul School is one I like way more. It's, and a lot of people, I think, have fond memories of Ghoul School mainly because of the Ghoul Girls themselves, like Tanis and Winnie, Fanty, and all of them. And I'm still just kind of flabbergasted that I live in a world where those characters have shown up in something fairly recent. Like, for those of you who don't know, and if you're really into Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, those characters come back, and at least some of them have the old voice actresses back. They come back in an episode of OKKO, where, like, it's an entire episode of, like, one of the main characters of that show hanging out with those characters, and they are canon to that show, and it's hilarious. It's just bizarre to me that I live in a world where that exists. But that aside, like, I found a lot of this movie surprisingly memorable. I remembered the other, like, academy, the Boys Academy. They had some fun shenanigans. Scooby and Shaggy are more in character, although they aren't the main characters, I guess you could say, but really, they take a backseat to all of the kids and, again, sort of like goofy shenanigans that happen around them. I surprisingly didn't remember the actual, like, plot of this movie very much, with, like, the creepy lady, like the witch who lives in the woods and tries to hypnotize all of the girls to have them as slaves, and also because they'll give her more power. Really not the most clearly laid out plot, not the most clear stakes, but, like, you know, all that stuff is entertaining enough. I feel like the first half of the movie is the more fun half, where it's just kind of shenanigans with these girls and these academy boys and Scooby and Shaggy and the goofy slapstick stuff that they get up to. The puns aren't quite as strong as Reluctant Werewolf's puns. This one definitely takes the bronze trophy in terms of puns, I think. And a lot of people of the 3 consider Ghoul School their favorite. I kind of surprised myself, where, looking at these 3 now, I think I like Boo Brothers the most. Boo Brothers, the one where Shaggy inherits a mansion, or like an old abandoned building from his rich relative that we never met before. Shaggy gets a Luigi's Mansion. It's Luigi's Mansion Shaggy Edition. And so he and Scooby and Scrappy, who's in these movies, and who everyone hates, but I don't mind Scrappy, he's fine. So the 3 of them go to the mansion, and it's, you know, infested by ghosts, and also they've got this weird southern family who's, like, feuding with Shaggy's family and is trying to kill him and or marry him. And, like, all these shenanigans are happening, and they hire these 3 ghosts who bust other ghosts, and it's great. Like, I think the Boo Brothers themselves, Frico, Miko, and Shriko are hilarious. I think all of the shenanigans that occur over the course of this movie are really fun and interesting, and I like that it's shenanigans, carried out over the course of an actual mystery. This is the one movie of these 4 movies that I'm talking about in this video that's an actual Scooby-Doo mystery. And it's fun in that way that, like, even if they're for little kids, mysteries often are. Like, it's fun watching these characters sort of have a goal and, like, have a drive, and, like, plot point by plot point, they are trying to figure things out, and, like, they have an active role in the events of the story, and, like, they're piecing things together and tracking down clues. Like, I don't know, it's really, really fun. Like, I don't know, it's really, really fun. It's also fun that this is a movie that I think started the trend that Scooby-Doo eventually adopted, which is taking the classic setup of, oh, it was just a guy in a costume, and mixing it with, oh no, there's real ghosts and supernatural elements. I really like that. I like the mix of just all of these different things that are coming at Shaggy and Scooby and Scrappy from all angles, and, like, they never catch a break. And so whether it's dealing with, like, the whole Hatfields and McCoys thing that they got going on, whether it's this bizarre escaped ghost gorilla, whether it's the Boo Brothers popping in and out of the movie and, like, having all of their shenanigans, the guys who are just in costume trying to, like, scare the gang off, as they often are. I just like the juggling act this movie has of all the different things that are going on. And I don't know, it feels like the most authentic Scooby-Doo experience of the movies that I've talked about. It's the most fun for me to watch. It's the one I most highly recommend. Like, if you're into Scooby-Doo and for whatever reason you haven't seen any of these, seek out Boo Brothers first. I think you'd like that. But anyway, I'm sure most of you have seen at least a couple of these movies, if not all 4 of them. So, what do you think of the Red Shirt Shaggy movies? Do you agree with my ranking of them? Boo Brothers, Ghoul School, Reluctant Werewolf. How do you feel about Scoob? Where do you think it falls in the sort of Scooby-Doo pantheon? Are you looking forward to the potential of more Hanna-Barbera universe movies done in this style? I think it's a potentially interesting concept. I've really got no stake in it, though. Like, if this movie did not make me more excited for more in this vein. So, again, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But, yeah, let me know what you thought about that. Let me know what you thought about the video. Again, look forward to some more scripted stuff coming soon enough, and it's some pretty lengthy, in-depth stuff that I think you should enjoy. So, between now and then, there'll probably be some more Doctor Who videos, some more Torchwood stuff. I hope you guys have been enjoying those. So, yeah, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.